Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that, like the struggle of NFP and...
Sorry, I was distracted. The baby just had pruning shears, but we're good now.
Typical.
One of the gifts of fertility. We can always make another, right?
Oh dear, okay.
Hi, we're Mike and Annie McHugh. We've been married for almost 9 joyful years. We have 5 amazing children, 4 out of the womb and 1 more on the way. And we're here to talk to you about why we love NFP. For me, I grew up not knowing that NFP was even an option. Growing up, it just seemed like contraception and birth control were the natural things that someone would use in their marriage and in their relationships. And so when I was in college and I finally first realized that there was another alternative to contraception, it was really quite surprising. Exactly, yeah. And so when I started learning about NFP and started realizing the benefits behind it, it really seemed kind of a no-brainer for me once I got on board. To think that we're so natural about so many things in our world, that one of the most natural things, conceiving and giving birth, we would all of a sudden start to medicate, just seemed really unnecessary and really just kind of an intervention that we didn't need to have in our relationships.
So I grew up, my mom was an NFP teacher, and so we would have couples coming over to the house, and so as a little girl growing up, I knew that NFP existed, and I knew that it was something that you did when you got married, and I didn't quite understand what it was, but as I grew, I learned from her what it was. So at first, NFP was like super easy.
Well, sometimes. But
Sometimes you like really wanted to. Okay.
Yeah, so NFP, when people talk about the struggle of NFP, and I think young couples were starting to understand this a little bit more. I think when certain groups push NFP, we kind of get sold on the kind of the rainbows and butterflies and the increased communication and the low divorce rate. But I think when you're actually practicing it, you kind of meet the reality of like, yeah, there's some great stuff about NFP. There's also some really sucky parts of NFP, which is not having sex sometimes. And for us, that was a challenge. We got married and we were so excited to have that intimacy. And then we had times that we couldn't, and so it required us to grow and change and find ways to express love in different ways that weren't physical in those moments. And so that was our first kind of struggle with it, was realizing, okay, this isn't as easy as some people talk about. And then baby number 1 came along and everything was great. And then about 3 months after that baby was born, baby number 2 was conceived, and we had 1, 2, 3 back to back to back, all about 13 months apart. And so I think that's when NFP. I got a little disillusioned or disenchanted with it, I think, at first, just realizing and thinking like, this isn't really working as I was told it would work. But as we studied it, we realized that the fault wasn't with the method, the fault was with our ability to practice the method. One of the things that I love about NFP, well, love and hate about NFP, is that it necessarily requires sacrifice. It requires me as a guy and as a husband to grow in virtue and being willing to give up certain things that I may want. And so I think in those hard times, I can do one of 2 things, right? I can either use that as an opportunity, the times that we can't have sex, offer that up and use that as a chance to find new ways to express affection for my wife. Or it can be what like a lot of guys do in our culture and just be petulant little children who don't get what they want in the moment and sulk about it. And so I think that it requires sacrifice, and if you know anything about marriage, from all the wonderful married couples that I've talked to over so many years, you can't be married without sacrifice, or at least you can't be married well without sacrifice. And NFP will present you with so many opportunities to do that. And if you embrace those, then I think your marriage will always be stronger for it.
Oh. And I know this isn't our struggle, but I think I want to speak to it because there are so many couples who do struggle with it, that they long to have a child and they can't. And they practice NFP so that they understand their cycle and they know when they're fertile or when they should be fertile. And they try and try and try to conceive a child, and they struggle to do that. And that is a huge burden for a lot of people. And again, that's an example where NFP can be hard. And so NFP can, first of all, show them if maybe something medically is going on with their cycle, that they might need to talk to a doctor about ways that they can increase their fertility. It could be very easy to say, oh, we're going to practice NFP in our marriage, and then as soon as it gets hard, say, well, never mind, like this is too hard, this is not for us. But instead to push yourself in those trials and see how you can grow as a couple and as a family as a result. You read all the side effects of birth control, that like anxiety, depression, weight gain. Like, what was the one that was like excessive hair growth in unusual places?
I think that was NuvaRing, before NuvaRing got outlawed, or it was one of those ones that back then, yeah, it was like excessive hair growth in unusual places, blindness and death.
Yeah.
And like, you're just like, why would you ever want to embrace some of these side effects if you don't have to? And I think that's the thing with contraception, is just, it seems like an unnecessary fix to a problem that doesn't exist.
Right.
It's a matter of convenience for sure, but at the same time, why would we alter something that is so unbelievably made. Whether or not you want to believe in God or evolution, regardless, everybody has to acknowledge that the human body is flipping ridiculously incredible.
And in a world that is becoming more and more aware of the chemicals we put in our body, the food that we eat, the hormones that we're putting in our food, like we're becoming more and more and more aware of that. Why with our fertility would that be any different? And again, like you said, it's fixing a problem that doesn't even exist. Fertility is not a sign of being sick. Fertility is a sign of being healthy. So why fill your body with something that could have very negative side effects when there is an alternative to understand your fertility instead of medicating your fertility?
That's all I got. Plus, when she's pregnant, you don't even need to practice NFP. It's like nature's birth control. You can only get her pregnant once in that time period.
Okay.
So